Okay, cool. So I started the database. I didn't start the database last time, so I killed the manager, started the database. They started the source server. No, Kalyan. We won't be touching upon these things. You can join the other WebLogic session that's coming up late, or you have the videos already. You have to cover through the WebLogic videos a couple of times. Yes, Prasad, they are too much different. But very a lot of differences between 10G and 11G. SOA 10G does not have WebLogic at all. SOA 10G is Oracle application server. That's one big difference you will find. Apart from that, a lot of internal differences. But the most obvious one is this one. Oracle application server is what is used in SOA 10G. 11G onwards, it's WebLogic. Where is it? This time?
In Encore IT, there is some interview questions of SOA. In the blog post, I bottom I put my responses and it added to that chain. I mean the topic.
Okay. Yeah, I started that some time back.
You just say that collective from few guys. What are the questions here? 10 or 11 small. You put a single line questions, right?
Yeah, that's posted here.
Yeah, I posted there and I entered where the comments. I posted so many. I give all the details and submit the comments. My comments.
This I think it should come under approved comments. I should approve it.
Okay, I mean it's kind of you have admin thing and
there are a lot of
approve.
spam messages. A lot of
Okay.
thousands per day. So who is this guy? Bangalore Live Connections. This is a company hiring 3 to 5. Look for WebLogic WebSphere. 3 to 5. What's the company? That's for today, I think. Yeah, this comment yet to come in. I have to approve it. I think we have another website here. We are planning on pushing this site. for all this, discussions kind of thing. Just like WebLogic-training, I just registered another site, sovatraining.net. So most likely we'll be pushing this site also. So it has.
This is also like initial need user credentials, right? I mean the
yes. So this is just like our WebLogic-training.com.
Okay, then I will post those things here. Then I will.
Please.
Yeah.
Please. I'm planning on putting some content in each of these things, a crash course kind of thing, so that people can come here. This is our regular WebLogic-training. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so our source server is up. General things. Cron jobs are pretty general things. What's happening to this one? Admin 1, 2, 3. Let's decompose it. Now the manual does not have any as such. What we can do is we can attach certain policies to this composite and protect it. Now for such an attachment, you have to basically define certain roles, policies, and then you have to attach those policies to the composite. We'll see this thing. Now before we go in there, we were talking about the default set of policies that come along with WebLogic. So this is how you can see all the lists of default policies at a browser level. So let's copy paste this. Fresh one. Oops. So IP port, sorry. 192.168.128.6.8001. This is also admin. These are the policies that come by default. There are about 88 policies. So some of them you will see, this is security related policy. This is MTOM related policies. This is MTOM related policy. Then addressing related policy. Authorization related policy, because we've seen certain types of policies. If you remember this one, these are the various types of policies related to security. So out of those, what we are looking at are the default policies. For example, let's say logging related policy, so which comes under management. See this one, Oracle log policy. What it says is, this policy causes the request, response, and the fault messages to be sent to a message log. So if I attach this policy to my composite or the OWSM will basically log everything to a file. So like that, there are lots of policies. So you'll see all these policies. So some of them, depending on what we are trying to do, we can use some of these existing policies, or we can define policies. There are certain tools to define the policies, alright, and get those policies into SOA. That also is possible. Assertion Template. This is in depth into security, but in general, you have the default policies. Most of the times they are sufficient. They can be attached to composites to pretty much secure the basic level. Now let's see how to secure one of our composites, the demo application that we're looking at. So if you see this one, currently I clicked on demo application. If you test it, currently there is no basically a security that needs to be given here. See this one here. Normally when we say request, there is a security tab here. Alright, it says none. So this service does not require any kind of username, password, or any kind of other security related information to be passed on when we are calling it. Let's say we call the service without any username, password. We did not attach anything yet to this one. So this is a very simple composite. You send a string, it says hello to it. Now we want to attach certain policies. Now after attaching those policies, let's say this composite gets protected with a very simple username, password. Now let's see how to attach those policies. Now you click on that composite. You see the policies tab here. For every composite you have policies tab. So go to the policies tab. I think I have already attached certain policies. I'm going to detach them first. You're going to detach it from the endpoint. Endpoint of a policy is something that a policy can be exposed in a lot of ways. Sorry, not policy, a composite. A composite can be exposed in a lot of ways. Each endpoint represents one protocol of exposing your service. Now if you see here, this is the endpoint. Using this endpoint, we are exposing our demo application service over HTTP protocol. There are a lot of ways you can expose this service. Each of those things will become an endpoint, which means a composite can have multiple endpoints, each one of them supporting a different protocol to receive. See, the composite always doing the same thing. It takes a request, it responds with hello, that string. That's always same, the internal functionality. But how does it receive a request can change. An HTTP client can send a request, or another protocol like RMI client can send a request, or some a lot of ways using XML. XML is the one that we are using, especially the RMI is another thing that immediately comes to my mind. So a lot of clients can be calling this service using a lot of protocols. So if we say we're going to provide only if it is incoming request is HTTP, probably our service is not completely utilized. So as a application owner or as a composite owner, you will be trying to offer your service in a lot of ways, like a bank offering its banking service. You can walk into their branch, you can do certain things at a ATM, you can log in online and do a lot of things. You can work on your smartphone, still access their services. So a service provider should be able to offer the services in a lot of modes, and that basically represent these endpoints. Each protocol is a mode. HTTP is one way of contacting the service. RMI could be another way of contacting the service. There could be another way to so each of those contact points represent an endpoint. So in here we have only one endpoint, which is HTTP based. So what I'm going to do is, from that endpoint I'm going to detach everything first, then we'll kind of starting on the blank. So I'm going to select. These are the policies. Detach. So pretty much done. So I'm cleaning up the slate. That's what I'm doing now. Yeah. Okay. So let's say this is the first time you're logging in. You clicked on the demo application. Alright. Then you get into policies. You don't see anything at all. Now you want to attach certain policies to it. Now you are simply trying to protect your composite a very basic security. Let's try to attach the very basic security. So we're trying to attach to the HTTP endpoint. Click on that endpoint. So now this globally policies can be attached globally also, right, at partition level or at info level itself, you can say, or you are directly attached in the policies at the composite level. So usually this is the way it's done. You don't usually attach it at global level. It's very rare, except for the logging related policies, but otherwise it's always at composite level. Now all the composite level policies are listed here, and if you see below, these are the available policies. These are the same set of policies that we have seen here. Where is it? Validator. These things. These are the same policies. These policies that what we have seen on a browser. These are inside a composite. So here. Now out of these available policies, we want to attach some policies. Now as I told you, there are lots of categories of the policies. See these things. These are the various categories of the policies we are talking about, which are listed in our PPT here. Reliability, management, addressing, security, MTOM. Now the same things here. Security, MTOM related, reliability, addressing, management. So you can actually select each of them. Let's say security. All the security related policies will be filtered out. These are all the security related. Now we know there are lots of types of security, like username, password is the basic security. SSL certificate is another security. SAML kind of thing is another security. Kerberos is another security. And there are lots of ways of securing your resource. You don't necessarily have to know about all those things, but there are ways. So each of those or some of those have certain policies. So here again, logging related. Let's look at logging, which comes under management. So click on management, filter it. This is only one policy. This is a policy that we're going to attach. So let's add some of those policies to our web service. Let's say this is what I'm going to add. I'm going to add these 3 policies to protect our service. This is an exercise that we're going to do. We're doing here. Attach and detach the following default policies to the existing composite without touching the code. Now we are attaching 3 policies. One is for authentication, which is this is a policy, HTTP token service policy. Other one is for logging, which comes under management related policies. Other one is for authorization. Alright, which means you can execute the code. Authentication is to get in, logging is for logging, authorization is for execution of the code. Now these are the 3 policies that we're going to attach to our composite. Once we attach, our composite gets password protected. Alright, so let me show you how to attach these policies. This is a usual WebLogic admin activity that we usually do. So here, let's go back.
Hello?
So we're trying to attach policies. Yes.
Yes, I just have a quick question. Like in the server level also, we will implement the same security policies as like in the application or like composites level?
Yes, similar policies you can implement. That's correct.
In WebLogic, we use MyRealm security, right? So while logging into for like username and password and even everything logging subsystem, so will it like be defaultly enabled inside the server level security policies? Because as we see,
Yes,
when we
yes.
start up the server,
Yeah, the MyRealm is the default one that comes along with it. So certain policies are already enabled.
Okay,
Which
so
will
the
let the
security log out.
WLS ADM. Yeah. When you are creating a
Okay.
domain, the username that we create, WLS ADM, so your config.sh basically enables certain policies and all the permissions to WLS ADM. So all the
Okay.
resources the corresponding user gets attached. There are
Okay.
policies, yes, they are by default.
Okay. So they would be that would be like globally attached policies for the server level, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's not at application level, that's more like a server level.
Okay. For application level or composite level, we have to explicitly configure them, right? Or like
That's right. That's right. You can
attach
protect
configuration.
applications on WebLogic directly, or you can protect certain URLs. We can define
Okay.
roles, policies. We can do that. At WebLogic also, we can do the same thing. We
Okay.
usually don't do it, so it's not something that we usually cover anywhere, but it can be done.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Got it. Thank you. So in exactly in the MyRealm security policies, normally we add the username and password, so that would be protecting the services, right? Like or the applications in WebLogic. That would be like normally we are encountering in security authentication
Now that's a
operation, right?
console username, password, or other related, but we are not actually securing application using that one. Application
Okay.
security
So
requires certain definitions of other. You need to let's click on the application, go into security tab. There you will be asked whether you want to protect this application.
okay. Okay.
So there you can define which roles can access this application or what users
Okay.
can access this application. That's the application level security. Click on the application or Medrec or whatever application you have, then go into security tab. You will see that.
Okay. Okay. Whatever I have said is like for the console access, like monitoring,
Yeah,
operating,
that's
right?
at WebLogic. That's right.
Okay. Yes, sir. Got it. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, so let's add certain policies to it. We have attached that. Let's detach it first. So I'm going to add these three policies. The first one is this one, Oracle WSS HTTP token service policy. This is authentication service, basically falls under security related category. So go in there, category security. I can search by name also, already if I know the name. So if I know the name, you can search by the name, or if you want to know the category, say let's say security category. Now out of these things, we're searching for this one, not this one. This one, WSS HTTP token service policy. Let's go back to the PPT. Yeah, Oracle WSS HTTP token service policy. So WSS HTTP token service. So select this one, attach it. Click on attach. So that policy is attached. The same way, let's attach the second policy, which is a log policy, which comes under management. I think just now we have seen it. So let's go in there, category. Now it's management related, which is logging. Filter, so select it, attach it, click on attach.
We can load new policies also using this tool, OWSM console tool.
Ideally yes, but I didn't see it anywhere. So if you're going to ask me how
Usually,
to
I mean,
load it,
we may
I'll need to
we may
check
get
it.
direct access. we may get XML files and loading something kind of thing.
Yes, that's obviously possible. The policies importing we should be able to do it. The third type of thing I'm adding is binding authorization policy. So this is again under security. Binding authorization permit all policy. Binding permission authorization policy. Yeah, Kalyan.
Yeah, I have one more doubt, sir. As we have discussed, like at the client side, the browser should be providing some security policies to invoke some services in the backend, right? It should be the it should take care of whatever the security policies the application services are like requesting. And at the backend side, as you said, when we deploy the application on particular server, on the server side, as we know, normally security serialized IDI.dat file will store all the username and passwords, right?
Right.
So how will that security file will know that application has some username and password? Like when we deploy the code, how will it rechecks all the requests coming in?
The request is coming to the server. So the server knows about the applications, isn't it?
So that's what, sir, like how, where will we like in WebLogic perspective, where will we like attaching the security policies to that particular file initially?
You go to the application, you click on security, there you have all the options. And you're doing all the operations on security folder of application. So you will be able to see all those things. Let me show you.
Security.
Go to deployments, you go to any of the deployments, let's say your own application. Click on that application, you have just no security tab here. No, it's a library. Okay, enterprise application. And the security, you can define all your roles and policies here.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Where are the policies?
So normally for every application we will define like that, right?
Yeah, you define the policy here that will define who can access, who cannot access.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to define your policy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
This we don't usually cover anywhere, so that's, I think that's the reason you have the confusion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is a very uncommon way of doing things.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come back here. So we're trying to attach certain policies. So we have attached these three policies. Once you've attached, you first validate it if you want to make sure these policies are valid policies for that composite. Once the validation is successful, you can say OK. That's it. So your policies, your demo application, which is current composite now, has these three security policies attached to it. Now you can temporarily disable those policies without detaching them. Means you can kind of bring it on, bring it off without actually removing them completely. Now once you have attached these policies, now your composite is secured with the basic username password. Now let's try to test it. Now if you try to test it now, alright, so it has to go, let's say you test it without any let me take the digital. We can test it using anything we want. We can test it using browser, we can test it using SOAP, anything is okay. Now my service, the composite is protected. Now I have to supply a username password to access it. If I don't supply it, and I should get some kind of authentication related error. So here, this one. This is my endpoint. I'm using a basic client, and this is how you will see the security related thing. You see this one? Username password is automatically coming out in the visitor. So if I don't provide a username password without providing anything, let's say I directly give an input, invoke it. See the error here? 403, forbidden. So you're not allowed to use or call that service without a username password. You don't have a username password. So your service is protected now. Now come back and do the same thing with the username password. Now we're going to use admin. The policy basically enables admin server to give access to that composite. That's the internal policy. You can have any other user actually be allowed to access that composite. You can integrate with external LDAPs. You can attach other policies so that other LDAP users are able to access it. But our policy simply gives permission to the admin user. So I'm going to have SYA admin 123 and code ID 123. Let's say now invoke it. It's still forbidden. It's still forbidden, so we did not get a response. Okay, let's try to do it from the enterprise manager. So I'm testing the same thing with HTTP basic authentication. SYA admin 123. Code 12. Invocation failed. This is the reason. Client received SOAP fault. Failed authorization. Failed in authorization at so and so. So basically it could not complete the authorization. We have to validate it in that case. Let me check it. There are certain steps that you can actually do, but that's a very elaborate procedure. You see this one? It's a very elaborate procedure that you can do. You can create certain users, 1, 2, 3, alright. You can add them to groups, couple of them, and don't add them to the other group. Then we're going to secure a web service which will allow only these 2 users but not the third user. It's a very elaborate preparation, but let's try to do it. This will get you into other areas of keys, key stores, all that stuff, but let me quickly try to follow this. I'm going to give you these steps also, but let me try to do it quickly. Enterprise Manager, I'm following these steps. Enterprise Manager, WebLogic domain security credentials. Create a map, WebLogic domain, security credentials. Security credentials. Create a map, map name, it exists. Create a key, this already exists. This is also there. Did we attach wrong policies or something? WSS HTTP token service policy. WSS HTTP token service. Log policy, binding permission authorization policy. Pretty much so.
You need to bounce, or it will pick up the changes?
It will pick up the changes. Don't need to bounce. Or should we bounce? If you say that, I have a doubt.
I think so, sir. For
Not
security,
necessary.
so we have to restart, I think.
No, that's a large security, especially when you're adding providers. This is something that I've done 10 times. It doesn't require a bounce, but the problem may get fixed after bounce. We'll see that. Theoretically it doesn't, because I've done it before, so it doesn't require a bounce. So let's say we add look at the log file. Failed authorization. Same enough. Okay, let me go ahead and follow the steps here. So this I've done. Let me finish it quickly. Why not? Domain name, security application roles. Application roles, application strip. So info. Create role 1 members add type group search for group one created from console. Cannot create a role. Why not? I think it's already there. Application policies. So and for principal type, I'm following this one. Principal type application role. Okay. Search. Okay, this role one. Oh, role one was already there. All these things are already there. Create permission, add, continue, create permission. Permission class. Resource name. Permission action star. Guarantee
Sir, in permission actions, you missed that star for permission actions. Is it not necessary?
What is it?
In permission actions, some star was enabled in the document. You missed it.
I did that one. Star is here. I'll show you. Yeah, here. This is the star that you're talking about. I did put it.
Even for permission actions, it was there star.
Acha, okay. Resource name, permission actions. Okay. This one, right?
Yes.
It's already there. And now it's gonna say that. Okay, I kept only one. We missed a policy. Token service policy. Same thing. Okay, let's try it again. HTTP basic authentication.
Selecting HTTP basic, but that is OWSM policy, right? I mean the security types.
Yeah, the OWSM it's not policy OWSM type policy. It's more of HTTP but provided by OWS.
But the radio button, then it is more meaningful if you sell the OWSM, right, under security.
That you don't have option to give a username, password, or that. So your HTTP policy basically comes under this one.
You have right configuration properties, username, password.
No, we have attached the HTTP policies. Here the one that we attached. That policy basically is a basic HTTP policy.
And the credentials which are providing are like admin username and password?
Right, we have defined those credentials, I think, when we are defining the policy. Yes, admin username password.
But it is SOA admin, right? But you are giving SOA admin 123.
That's a password, right? Admin 123. That's it. Similar or newer? Suppose it. How to get rid of this?
Then you get the same 403 authorization issue or some other issue.
Yeah, 403, I think.
But if the credentials are wrong, we should get like invalid authentication, right? Why is it showing authorization?
Yeah, that's what precisely that's what it's supposed to say. But once you logged in,
so authentication is done, it seems then.
earlier the error used to be something different. I saw a 403. Where is the 403?
Yeah, that I mean now the user credential issue resolved, that authentication, but the authorization is not going. I mean it doesn't have a role or use to call that service. I think the user.
Yeah, something once it went in is failing. I don't see the distinct 403 is not there. So error is different this time.
So is that a demo application has anything inside? Security, no?
No, not at all. Let's go ahead and redo it.
So even if we define multiple policies also, we should just enable that HTTP basic authentication tab, sir?
Multiple policies. If your policy is related to basic authentication, then you have to. If you are defining,
But we have like authorization, all those stuff also, right? So I think so. Is it not picking from that only? It's picking only authentication. It seems. I hope.
Authorization is inside. Authorization has nothing to do with
Okay.
client. Authorization is on the server. So you go with the username password. If that username password has a role, you are authorized. So you're logging in, then you're saying you're not allowed to go in there. So client cannot do anything over there. Either client needs to provide some other username password, or whatever it is providing should be authorized.
Okay.
That's it. Where is the policy that we just now created?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, sir, did we put this username and password in the user creation and anything group? Because we did not assign it to role 1, right? Username and password. Did we have that?
Yeah, we done that one first. Failure in authorization. It's going past, then getting failed. Authorization failure means this user does not have a role. The role that they want is role 1. So add should have role 1, which we have done here. I think something is going on here. Application roles, application. So and so. you have everything? These three policies. Let me see if the credentials are wrong. Invoke operation failed. Failure in authorization. That's so and so. Policies. Let's say we disable this authorization policy. So it's working. Without username password, is it working? Forbidden. This is what I've done. We were able to prove the concept, but not able to fix that error. So this is what I've done. I've disabled that authorization policy. So demo application in here, policies, we are expected to have all the three policies: authentication, which is HTTP token, logging, authorization. Now because we see an authorization error, so what I have done is I have disabled it. So now this policy is basically disabled authorization policy. That's why you are seeing the enable tag. For the other two which are enabled, so you are seeing disabled tag. So now I have a logging policy and then HTTP token. Now if my obviously my composite is now protected with a username password. If I don't supply a username password, it will throw me error. If I supply a username password, it will allow me to access. Let's try both scenarios. So in security I'm saying none, so basically I'm not supplying any username password, and say no password. So when we are not sending any password, you will see an error now. This is the error you got. Your error is basically forbidden error 403, which basically says the username password is not provided, or authentication related stuff. 403. Now provide the HTTP. admin 123. Click on it. Now you got this password. Alright. But what that issue, I'm not able to fix it. Authorization issue. I'll have to work on it. You got the idea? Okay. Let's see. This is a general terminology that we have one more slide. A security policy is what we have seen. Assertion point is where it gets checked. Policy is what you attach to the composite. But when a client, in our case, let's say the browser, when access the server or the composite, the assertion point is where the validation is done. So this is a general terminology here, you will say. Apart from that, OWSM basically separates security from composite coding. Alright, this is a generic structure of OWSM. The policy manager is the main thing. Is the one that is allowing you to attach, detach policies, define all those policies and other stuff. Yeah, policy is attached to the endpoints, right? If a composite cannot have a lot of services, it's not possible. A composite is always exposed as a single service. A composite may be calling services inside, but when you say a composite, it's usually exposed as with a single WSDL. So that WSDL is nothing but a service. So a composite always represents a service only, single service only. But a composite can have a lot of endpoints. You can attach different policies for each of the endpoints. That's possible. But a composite means one service only, always. Alright. So these are the three policies we have attached, but we did not actually attach the authorization policy. We did not fix that problem. We just disabled that policy, so we went in with authentication and logging only. That's a simple way of showing it, but you should be able to fix that authorization issue also. That's not. We'll try to see that one. Well, I'll work on that one and give you an update of it. Alright, so that's your very small OWSM. Now let's look at performance tuning. This is also a very small topic because as I told you, the JVM performance tuning is almost 2.5 hours or 3 hours session. So I thought we'll include it, but again it's better I give you a video of that one. That's pretty much the same as the one I'm talking. Instead of me talking, you go through the video. So those who are already WebLogic, so they have that video. You just have to go through that video one more time. Alright, for those who are not part of WebLogic, I'll forward that video for performance tuning alone of JVM. What we will see is source specific performance tuning. SOA specific performance tuning is nothing but the engine's performance tuning. That's the only tune area where you can tune something. If you go to the console, I think on that day we were looking at administration of SOA components. Now during that administration, if you set up proper values, then you basically say it's tuning. It's like JVM, you set up values, if you set up the proper values, it's tuning. Same way SOA also here. So if I go in here, we were looking at each of these. So admin, each of these properties. So we're looking at people, mediator, workflow. These are the three areas where you can actually tune. So if I click at people, now these are the values that can be tuned. Now let's see what can tune and what should be those values. So this one. Now BPL, as we know, this is the main orchestration engine. So basically when somebody calls a service or when somebody invokes a service, BPL engine is probably the first one that gets invoked. Now the BPL engine internally has dispatcher threads, means those are the guys who are actually working inside each of the threads. Now there are three types of threads: invoke threads, engine threads, system threads. These are the three types. Invoke threads are basically when a lot of incoming calls are coming into your SOA infrastructure. For example, let's say this is your SOA. There are a lot of clients who are making calls to your SOA. So your SOA is nothing but a service, so a lot of clients are making calls. So you have invocations. Now when you have a lot of invocations, all those invocations are being handled by invoke threads. So your service gets invoked here, the composite. Alright, so composite is here. Now your composite might be calling other services, isn't it? So let's say there's a service here, there's a service here, there's a service here, there's a service here. So your composite is basically offering service 1. The other services are probably service 2, service 3, service 4, like that. Now your S1 is basically calling S2, S3, S4. Now when you call S2, it's going to respond back what we usually call a callback. Right? Isn't it? So you have a callback. Now the callbacks are handled by the engine threads. This is important. So invoke threads are to the left of this this red box. Invoke threads will make sure whoever is invoking gets a response. Once the invocation of the composite is done, your composite might be calling a lot of other services outside. Now when you call those services are going to respond back to you, which are called callbacks. Now the callbacks are handled by engine thread. So here on this side you have invoke threads, and on this side we have engine threads. That's a general idea. So invoke threads are handling invocations, engine threads are handling callbacks. So if your environment, now if you look at if your environment has a lot of engine threads, or if your environment has a lot of invoke threads, depends on if you are receiving too many invocations or if you are making too many calls, which will make you receive callbacks. So depending on what you are receiving too much, you will increase the corresponding number. Apart from that, now when these two engines are working, there is a lot of maintenance work that needs to be done inside the Beeple engine, like cleanup thing, managing the threads, alright, recreating. All this maintenance is handled by the system related threads. So basically it's in-house, what we call usually. So in-house maintenance will be handled by system threads. So invoke threads are working with invocations, engine threads are working with callbacks, system threads are working with your basically in-house this thing. So let me save it somewhere. Okay. Now once that is done, let's see what are the changes that you need to do here. So if you see this one, these are the three threads we're talking about. So if we have too many system threads, invoke threads, engine threads. System threads are basically, whenever you increase any of these two, you will increase the system threads also. Invoke threads basically are working if you have too many invokes. Let's say instead of 20, if your environment has too many invocations, you bring it to about 50, so that you might see a lot of performance improvement. Dispatcher engine threads are the ones that are actually, the engine threads are the ones that are actually taking care of the incoming callbacks. So if there are too many callbacks that your environment is receiving, you will see increase into probably next number. And whenever you increase any of these two, your maintenance activity needs to increase, in which case you increase this. So these are the three important aspects of a Beeple engine. Apart from that, you want to have audit level at an appropriate value. So basically minimal is the best value. You don't want to basically put it to off, but minimal audit level is what you want. Audit level basically defines what you are tracking. Then audit trail threshold means what is the amount of audit information that you are storing. So once it reaches this threshold, the tables related to Beeple will not store that information anymore. It will be put into another location. A large document basically defines the size of the XML payload that it can hold. So there is a limit to the XML load. Alright, so the size of the XML is limited again. Only up to an extent it can be stored into the dehydration store or your especially dehydration store and MDS. Now you will define it, you will increase it if you have a large number of big documents in your environment. That might cut down some errors. You will increase the corresponding threads. You will disable payload validation. You don't want to enable this one. Payload validation is basically if the incoming message is correct or not, the XML is properly formatted or not. Then disable Beeple monitor. This is something that you have to enable it. When you enable it, basically monitors and sensors are the activities that will be used usually with the BAM. So if your composite has a lot of monitors and sensors, then your composite has to push the data into BAM's ADC, which is going to cause a performance degradation. So you need to disable Beeple monitors and sensors wherever it's possible. do not allow payload validation, increase your threads, reduce your audit level, alright, reduce your audit threshold, or probably increase your large document size if you have to. Those are certain things that, see this one, reduce your audit level, increase your large document threshold, reduce the log level. This is another important thing. You don't want to have a log level at trace. The default level is notification. That's sufficient most of the times. So you don't want to go beyond notification. If possible, you can actually go above. Instead of notification, you can say warning. So you will see only warnings and everything above. That's another way of reducing the amount of log you are producing. Apart from that, your purge data. As we know, all the instances are actually storing everything into the dehydration store. So you need to keep your dehydration store at a very minimal size. If the dehydration store increases, size increases, it means it's basically increasing the data in the database. So when the next instance goes to the table where the information is stored, it has to scan through a larger area. Now obviously when you are scanning through a larger area, it's going to take time, so the instance wait time will increase. So it's not faster anymore. So you need to keep your dehydration store to a minimum. Now those are some of the values that you will actually tune. So here for the changes that to talk about, this is one change that immediately you can do: disable BPL sensors and monitor. But be careful here, if you disable it, your BAM reports may not work. So you need to see how your BAM is working. BAM, is it working based on monitors and sensors, or is it pulling data from some other location? If it is pulling data from some other location, no issues. But if it is using monitors and sensors, you have a problem. So you cannot disable in that case. Payload validation, you don't want it, so it is not obviously, that's how it is. Audit level is something that you can reduce. Large document threshold, you want to increase it in case it's not for performance tuning, but to reduce certain types of errors. So these are the main things are dispatcher threads. You need to increase the dispatcher threads of the corresponding type depending on what kind of environment yours is. That's your BPL engine tuning. The same way, if you look at mediator engine tuning, let's go in there. Now these are some of the values of the mediator. Let me go through all these values. Some of them you can tune, especially the first part. This is what you can tune. The second part is not really required for tuning, but the first part is. Audit level, you want to keep it minimal, that you know. So if you have off, it's better, but off is dangerous, so you keep it to production. Metrics, you want to disable metrics collection. What happens is, when you start the server, if you have observed, you will see DMS collecting metrics. You see this thing? There's a warning. You will see a lot of warning. What it says is Oracle DMS collector. This is a dynamic monitoring servlet. That's what DMS is. A dynamic monitoring. This is a servlet that collects all the general metrics related to various parameters on your environment. Now, sometimes we don't use these metrics. So this is not a type of monitoring that we are actually trying to do. So if you are not using these metrics, then there is no point in collecting those metrics, especially for mediator, because mediator will be receiving a lot of messages, routing, all that stuff. So if you are not using the metrics, then don't collect it. That's what this metrics level is about. Enable it, disable it. If you are not using the metrics, don't collect it. So disable metrics collection. Parallel worker threads. These are the number of threads inside mediator that are actually serving the request. If you have too many mediator components in your composites, increase the number of worker threads. So there are some composites that have too many mediator invocations. If you have too many mediator invocations, then you can actually increase the number of worker threads. Now let me show you another area here. In each of these components, you can actually look at the summary. We are looking at the properties now, but you can actually look at individual components. This is the overall performance summary. See this one. Total number of people messages, total number of mediator messages, total number of workflow messages, total number of dish. So the 4 engines messages you actually can monitor. Now if you see more number of mediate requests, which means your composites have too many mediate requests, in which case you will go back to the mediator properties, increase the number of worker threads. We don't have any metrics here, so this graph is pretty empty because we don't have anything at all. That's why you see a small graph, but in a real environment you should see all types of messages, graphs going up and down. So if you see too many mediator requests, you increase the number of worker threads. So going back here, alright, so this increase. Now a lot of time the mediator actually goes to the database, fetches records. Now that area is something that can be tuned. Now the next 3 parameters basically tune how you're going to go to the database and how many rows you're going to fetch at a time. If you see this one, parallel maximum rows retrieved. It basically tells once you go to the database, you're going to fetch 200 rows at a time. Now ideally, if there are too many requests to the database, you would like to increase this number so that every time it goes to a database, it fetches more number of rows. So you will reduce the number of calls to the database. That's the aim here. See here, it gives a nice explanation. The number of rows will be retrieved by parallel message locker per single locking cycle, which means when you go to a database, fetch 200 records, or let's say fetch 500 records. That's much better. But this value has to be supported by a database, so make sure you don't increase it to a very huge number that your database throws out errors. So try to increase it more step by step and see if the performance is increasing. And then what's the time gap between such database calls? Is the locker thread sleep time. Let's say you have an environment where the messages to the mediator are not received continuously, but they are received at random or after long pauses. So what you do is you make your locker thread sleep for longer instead of going to the database again and again, because the data to the database is not being received continuously. So there is no point in going to the DB again and again. So you increase the sleep time so that your mediator fetcher goes at not frequent intervals, but at much with a lot of gap in between. The same way, this is about errors, especially rejected messages and errors related to mediator. Now the mediator actually goes to the database again to fetch these errors. How frequently it goes to the database is defined by the sleep time. You are saying every 5 seconds go to the database, but if your environment has such a behavior wherein not every 5 seconds you are receiving anything, but you are receiving ideally on every 60 seconds, then probably you will want to increase it to about 30. So that way the number of times you're going to the database is reduced. So these are the 3 or 4 parameters, especially the parallel worker threads. This is the most important thing, and you will increase it by looking at the monitoring stats. So if you see here, let's see if there are any other areas. Mediator, you are disabling the metric collection. That's one thing that we did, because if you choose not to use the metrics, you increase the parallel worker threads if there is high load on your mediator. Then you increase the parallel max rows. Basically what you are doing is you go to a database once, you fetch the maximum number of records. You increase the sleep time also if the data is not continuous in your database. The sleep time you can increase for parallel locker, error locker. These are the 2 threads that will actually fetch the data from the DB. Parallel locker is one thing, error locker is other thing. Container ID refresh, container ID leasing time are actually used in cluster. Basically when you have a SOA cluster, your mediator is on both the instances of SOA infra. Now one mediator should realize that the other mediator went down, and the way they realize is by refreshing the container ID. It's like a heartbeat. The container ID is actually the heartbeat of mediator. So when the container ID gets updated, it basically means the other guy is still available. Because SOA cluster will be a synchronization of composite will be happening through the coherence. The coherence will try to detect the container ID latest timestamp. If the timestamp is updated, it will realize, okay, this component is still up. And the reason why we are looking at a mediate level is it's not necessary that your entire SOA server goes down. It might be possible that other engines are available, but mediator engine only failed. Then coherence has to detect that only mediator engine has failed. So in general, what we say is SOA server 1 failed. So it's not the case always. It's not necessary. It's possible only mediator failed. Even in that case, you should be able to identify that failure. Then leasing time is basically leasing timeout. Basically, this is like heartbeat timeout. Means if you did not update your timestamp for 300 seconds continuously, you're going to be called as a dead one. So that's a lease timeout. This is something that you won't really change it, but if you want to change it, the scenario would be you have a large or you have a cluster with lot of network latency. When you have a network latency too much, so your servers will take a lot of time to refresh or to communicate, then in that case you want to have a high timeout, otherwise one member will think the other member is dead. So in that case you will increase this timeout. Then there is a resequencer inside mediator. Basically the resequencer is the one that arranges messages. You don't really touch upon this one, but if possible, go through what a resequencer is. Resequencer is basically a developer's setup. Well, if possible, go through that once, but otherwise, you can pretty much leave this one resequencer for now. You won't be working on that one. Your concentration is basically on the first 4 for a general mediator, this thing. For a clustered mediator thing, these 2. Container ID, refresh time, container ID is nothing but your mediator engine ID. It's called a container. So for a mediator, these are the 4 things that you're going to 4 or 6 things. The first 6 things you're going to monitor. Audit level, you disable your metrics, you increase your parallel worker threads, you increase the parallel max rows retrieved, you increase the parallel locker thread sleep time depending on your environment, and you increase the error logs of thread. If there are too many errors, you want to pick them fast, you may want to decrease this one the same way. That's your mediator. Apart from mediator, there's another thing parallel to along with mediator. You have BAM thing. BAM is another area where you can tune. The BAM, the one tuning that you do for BAM is, normally BAM receives data into the ADC one at a time, or one data set at a time. If you remember, we have used an example where the ADC receives data set that contains name of the employee, interest like Sachin cricket, or Rahul Gandhi politics. That's what we have sent the data. Now wherever an instance tries to send this data, it can directly send it to the ADC one at a time. Yes, Sachin cricket, it was sent. Rahul politics, sent to ADC. Somebody else, or Shah Rukh Khan movies, sent to ADC. So one at a time it can be sent. But to optimize or to improve the performance, what BAM can do is you can batch them together and send it as a bulk package. It's like sending 10 letters versus bundle all of them together, send you a single courier bundle. That's exactly the same thing that we are doing here. So instead of sending data into the ADC one data set at a time, you bundle those data sets together and you send it across. Now the bundling has certain limitations. Your bundle, you are basically saying you should have at least, these are the general values, 1000, 5000. Means batching lower limit means in that bundle there should be at least 2500 letters. You are saying in that bundle at max you can have 10,000 letters. That's what you are saying. So you're bundling, you cannot say 100 you have and you're going to bundle it together and send it. So that's, in that case, you will wait till it reaches 2500. Or if you have 1 lakh, you won't say you're going to bundle all the 1 lakh into a single bundle and send it. It cannot, ADC cannot receive. You will reduce it to only 10,000 and send it across. Now let's say none of these settings are reaching. So 10 seconds you are looking at, you have only 100, so it did not reach the lower limit. 50 seconds you are at 50 seconds you are at BAM, but you still did not receive that 2500. So how long you're going to wait before you send some data? Because you need to send the data to ADC. You cannot just wait because you did not reach a lower limit. So your till 2499 it's piling up, isn't it? So you're saying I will send only 2500. You can't keep forever, right? Let's say you can't wait for a month if it is a letter. Even if you could not bundle it, you should still send it within reasonable time. Now that time is this one. Means if you don't receive the minimum within 100 seconds, you send whatever you have. That's the idea. So, but before these 100 seconds, alright, you will wait till you receive 2500. So these are the 3 values that will define the batching of data sets that are going into ADC. You will have the general settings are 100, 500, 1000, 5000. You need to change it to 2500 and 10,000. And these values are defined in BAM configuration.xml file. I think I did not. Oh, I missed a point somewhere. 1 unit of batch is, you have the limit, right? This is the limit that you are looking at. So you will have anything between 2500 to 10,000. Each batch goes out at least every 100 seconds. Not exactly every 100 seconds, probably 2500 data sets or messages that need to be sent to BAM. Now these properties are defined in BAM config file. I think I did not put the BAM config file. I want to do a quick Google here. Alright, just to show you that file name. These settings need to be set into a file name. It's called BAM config file. I want to show you the sample here. Yeah. Oh, I think I have that. This thing. Uh, sorry guys, that's my son. This document should have all those things. This is the document it's actually opening. If any of you want this document, let me know. Batching limit lower. Here we go. This is the configuration file. BAM common config.xml file. I'll upload it, Prasad. See this one. BAM common config.xml. The BAM common config.xml, this is that strip where you define these values. You see these things? Batching limit lower, batching limit upper, batching timeout. These are the three values we are talking about. And depending on your environment, you can actually change the values. There's certain other values also that I see. So batching flush on demand kind of thing. So I'm not sure what it is, but you can actually check. But these three are the important ones. Right, these three. They're all available in FM wconfig directory of your domain home. So domain home config, Fusion middleware config, your BAM server applications corresponding directory. Right. So here, that's another area where you can tune your Oracle SOA, especially if you have too many BAM reports that you are generating, too much data that you are sending it to BAM. You should able to tune it by batching the data sets. Addition services, human workflow. There's not much here from an administrative perspective, but there are certain things that can be done from a developer's perspective. That if you want to get deep into that one, get your hands dirty, you can actually go through this command. I'm going to send it to you. This has some nice description. Apart from that, that's the reason I did not include anything related to admin, so you will be wasting your time unnecessarily on something that's not relevant to us. But a developer can do certain things with decision services, business tools, and human workflow. Apart from that, as I told you, JVM tuning is again a full-fledged 4-hour session that now I'm going to send through a video. The video I'll upload it for those who did not attend WebLogic, but that's a detailed video. Apart from that, there are certain additional points that I have included here. One is the disabling explicit GC. These values are actually picked up from the PDF itself. So these are common points that we always talk about XMS, XMX values to be same. Alright, tuning the compartment sizes depending on your environment. You can change the new generation size, then you can define the survivor spaces. So the entire survivor, what is survivor space, what is generations, what are compartments, they're all in JVM architecture in that JVM video. So that I'm going to upload it to you. Then about the third, these are the 3 points that we usually target when you're performing JVM tuning. You make sure these 2 are same, then you can tune the compartment sizes, you can tune the algorithm. This is an additional thing that you don't have anywhere. Explicit GC is a common frequent thing that happens by default in WebLogic. Alright, so the full GC is something that might be taking too much of your resources, so you want to disable that frequent GC. So this is related to JVM, but I suggest you go through that video once, two times if possible. You will get a very good understanding of what is it, how does SOA application contribute. SOA is a Java application, isn't it? Just like any other Java application, SOA also contributes to the Java heap. That's where all your objects are getting created. SOA is nothing separate. SOA is nothing special. It's a Java application, so just like any other Java application, it's going to create all the objects in the heap. It's nothing different from anything else. Which components, that depends obviously on what kind of composite you have, isn't it? What's your composite makes, tells you which component is contributing more. If you have a mediator component, that will do.
Anil, my question, to be precise, is that each composite is made up of different components internally, right? So we have some Spring context, and we have mediator, we have workflow. So each of these is a Java artifact internally. But
all of them.
For any Java program we write, we know how many variables we are creating, and that will be occupying how much heap size would be allocated for each object creation. But these are predefined objects, right? So how does a message? So is it that each XML message that comes in is interpreted as an object internally? So that means if the message size is more, that means the heap allocated for that message in the memory is more.
Yes, that's correct.
So each
XML is a
so
payload which is inside a Java class.
Okay, so that is an object internally.
That's an object.
That becomes an object internally.
That's right. That's right.
So the size of the XML message is directly corresponding to the size of the object.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and when we have this new gen and old objects, right? Nursery and old objects kind of structure in the JVM. So so are these small objects or large objects? Because we have something kind of TLAs and all those stuff, right?
No, they're all objects. The generation has nothing to do with the size. Whether it's small object or large object, it has to be first created in Eden. It has to go to survival space 1, 2, and then old generation. The sequence of flow is same for big and small.
How does it affect the thread level allocation?
Thread has nothing to do with objects. Thread is one that gets allocated to a request.
I'm talking about the memory. There is some kind of memory called thread level allocation, right?
No, there is no memory allocation with thread.
Within the scope of the thread.
No. Threads don't get allocated memory.
No,
there isn't.
It's not that. I've read somewhere that whenever there is an area in the nursery part that's a keep area or something, okay? Wherein a thread is the whole a specific memory area is allocated for each thread.
Yeah, but there is no limit, right? Whatever the thread asks will get allocated. It's like operating system. Compare it with this one. You have an operating system, and operating system does not restrict the amount of memory a process can ask. Whatever you ask, operating system will give. Now the question is, if you ask too much, OS will say out of memory, so it will crash. So the same thing, if the thread asks too much memory from the JVM, it will go into out of memory.
You control the thread memory, right, using the XSS, stack trace XSS parameters.
That's not thread level memory, it's stack. The stack is used by all the threads. I'm sure you got the idea what we are talking about? You got a clarification of your question?
Yeah. Yes. Actually, I read it somewhere that there is some keep aware memory, and each thread level there is a specific area, a small amount of area.
Yes. Yeah, thread is allocated.
Yeah, my question was, what kind of in a composite scenario, in a SOA kind of scenario, so what kind of memory could be associated with that TLA kind of memory? Because everything XML payload is an memory object that's created on an instance.
No, you're getting confused with two things. Thread memory that you said is for metadata, how the thread is going to function. But when the thread creates an object, it's not going to create in its own memory. It's going to come into JVM.
Okay.
So the thread allocation happens in Purging. In the permanent generation compartment, the threads will have the individual metadata related information. But when the thread is working, when it's executing code, so let's say it executes Java code which it creates an object which has an XML inside it, that is not going into the thread's memory. It goes into the general heap. So the thread memory is different, heap is different.
So thread memory is the Purging.
Yes, it comes from the Purge.
So there are only 3 compartments, right? Young generation and old and Purging.
Those are generations. 5 compartments. You will go through that video once you want. So you will have a fair idea. Then you can ask me the questions. I think it'll clear a lot of your queries by itself.
Yes, I have some confusions regarding all the layout of that. So
yeah, you will get a clear idea once you go through that video. Right. Okay. So that's your SOS specific performance tuning. As I told you, WebLogic still has a lot of things that can be tuned. So you'll go through that thing, the video for that WebLogic specific. Now the next thing is Purging that I have promised you. I'll give you an
Could you please mute everybody?
yes. Yeah, I think you guys are already on it. Okay. Now purging the dehydration store. As you know, dehydration store is basically the SOA infra schema in the database, which stores the state of the instances, including the payload depending on your audit level. If your audit level is development, the XML payload also gets stored into the SOA infra. Now, you are storing too much data into the database. So as we were talking about, if it is too much data, it's difficult to retrieve it, especially after a crash or when you are doing a fresh deployment. So you need to keep your size of the dehydration store to a minimal possible level, which means you need to do regular maintenance of the dehydration store. A maintenance in the sense you will remove from the dehydration store anything that is not necessary. That's it. And that process is called purge. Purging is basically removing all the data which is not necessary from the dehydration store. Now the purging can be done in a lot of ways. That's what we're going to see. So what are the various tools available, what's the best method, and how you as a system admin get involved into purging. Now purging here we're talking about is specific to dehydration store and the instance data. Now you are basically trying to manage the database growth here by purging. So there are 2 major types of managing this growth. One is using purge scripts. In both the cases, you are basically deleting large number of instances. That's what you are doing. But you can delete these large number of instance data using a script. Or there is a second approach called partitioning. Partitioning tables is a DBA intensive work which you will not be participating. It has to be planned properly. What's a partition, how you're going to store your data. We will talk about a little bit about that one, but you will be concentrating most on the purge scripts. There are certain scripts that can be run again by the DBA. This entire thing is database intensive work. You cannot perform this activity without the knowledge of being an administrator. You need an administrator sitting next to you. But what we are essentially trying to do is we are trying to remove all the data not related to or not required anymore. Now to delete the data, you are approaching these methods. So you can use Enterprise Manager to delete the instance data. You can use a purge script which are single-threaded or multi-threaded. Single-threaded purge script is called looped purge script. A multi-threaded purge script is called parallel purge script. Now all the scripts are provided by default with SOA installation. I'll show you the scripts. So here what you have is either from the Enterprise Manager you can delete the instances, or you can run a single threaded Purge script, parallel threaded Purge script. Now when you use what is the question. Enterprise Manager is kind of one instance that you want to remove, or a couple of instances, because you will be connecting through the Enterprise Manager here. Let's say you go to this composite, you click on this composite, you go into instances. Alright, you can select the instances here. Alright, select all your instances. Either that's currently available, or you can search. You can search based on instance ID, or probably the best way to search is start time to end time. Let's say you want to remove all the faulted instances in the last 1 day. So you give the start time, you give end time, then you filter it, or you do a search. After you did a search, you filter the state, alright, whether it's running, completed, terminated, or stale. Let's say you want to remove all the stale instances. So your stale instances gets listed here. Let's say these are stale instances. Let's just say that these are stale instances. These are not actually stale, they are completed instances. Or else let's say do completed. Let's say we want to remove all the completed instances. They're not completed. What's the status? Instance state is not tracked. Basically we disabled a parameter. So there is a parameter here, common properties. Go into common property. This is a performance tuning measure. This you will get in interviews. Remember this guy, yeah. I forgot to tell you. It's this one. This is a common question. You are accessing Enterprise Manager and it's timing out. What are you going to do? That's the question you will see in certain interviews. The reason why Enterprise Manager times out is when you launch Enterprise Manager, it tries to fetch all the data related to composites from the database, and most of the times it fails. That's the reason it times out. Now the problem, or the solution to this problem is you will ask the Enterprise Manager not to bring any data from the database. And the way you say it is by selecting this option here. Disable fetching of instance and fault count metrics. Each metric can still be retrieved on demand. Means by default your Enterprise Manager is not going to fetch all the details. It simply says, we will get the data when you ask for it. So this is one thing that you will select. You are basically disabling any metric fetch. You are not fetching the metrics from the database, especially when you are launching the Enterprise Manager. This is a solution for EM timeouts. Now if you selected it, ideally when you go back to this instances here, alright, here you will filter by it. Alright, once you filter, you select whatever you want. You can delete all the selected, or you can delete with options. So when you delete with options, basically you will get a couple of other various ways of doing it. Common delete options are these things. You can delete all last 24 options, all 7 days, all 31 days, or you can say delete all instances of this composite, delete all the instances that will match certain criteria. So anything basically you basically select a criteria and delete it. So let's say I delete it. That's it. You have deleted from the dehydration store. Now this is for one or two kind of instance cleanup. You cannot really clean up thousands or lakhs of instances from the database using Enterprise Manager. A much efficient way would be to directly work on the database itself. Now to work directly on the database, you got two scripts. They're called Purge Scripts. Both the Purge Scripts are available in this location. So let me show you the Purge Scripts here. They are part of RCU. When you install RCU, you will get that Purge script. So let's go to that RCU directory where we have extracted it. I think we have students. Well, that's why. My RCU. So this one, RCU home, RCU integration server and SQL. Look at that path when I'm doing it. So cd RCU home, RCU, where is RCU? This one, RCU, then integration. This is integration. Okay. Then SOA infra, which is this. Then SQL. So Purge, you'll have a Purge script, this one. These are your Purge scripts. Now you have Purge scripts overall, which is this Purge script, or you have Purge scripts specific to individual components. Actually, the component specific scripts are called inside this SQL. You can open this SQL script. You see, the component specific scripts are actually called inside. So when you are purging data, you are purging it from all the components and the corresponding engines. Component specific data is stored in the corresponding engines. So it basically has individual engine based scripts, and those scripts are put together to make it a bigger script, which is a Purge script. Now this is a very sensitive scripts. These are, we don't modify it unless we really know what we are trying to do inside it. Now if you see this, the important stuff here, cd SOA purge, this is the main script. Apart from that, these are other scripts. Look at the readme file. This is where you will find the purge, overall Purge script. See this one. You got a loop purge and you got a parallel purge. And this is the script for loop purge. In the loop purge, now when you execute it, let's say you want to execute loop purge. Now as I told you, loop purge is just, when you use loop purge versus when you use parallel purge, these are the Purge scripts you are talking about. See this one, declare so and so values, begin with these values. You're going to execute a procedure called delete instances. This is what you're going to execute for parallel purge with these values. The same way, if it is loop purge, this is what you're going to execute. You just have to put it into a SQL file and you execute this file on the DB. That's what you're going to do. So here if you say Enterprise Manager is when you have one or two instances that you want to remove. Loop purge is as a strategy. What you would usually do is every night, let's say middle of the night, 12 o'clock, you will run a loop purge for 1 hour that will remove certain data. The reason is you don't want to wait for the entire week or entire month and then execute a long running SQL script. That's not what we want. Instead, what we want to do is we want to execute these maintenance scripts every, let's say, midnight, at least for 1 hour. So that you are basically keeping your maintenance work to the minimal time, only 1 hour a day, and also you are not allowing the database to grow too large. That's the second thing. And third thing is, if you don't do this thing, what happens is at the end of a week or at the end of 1 month, you have very large data and your script keeps running for hours. That's something that you don't want. So normally on a daily basis, you will run a looped purge. Looped purge is single threaded because it is single threaded and it takes less resources. Now parallel purge is multi-threaded, which means it takes too many resources. Pretty much nothing else should be running on your database if you are running parallel purge script. Means it is possible only during off-peak hours, especially if there is no load on the database. Then you will run a parallel purge script which will invoke multiple threads and you will be able to clean up much faster. But that's when you have heavy data. So your purging strategy usually involves both loop purge and parallel purge. Remember, it's not that in an environment that you are working, you are using only one type of purge. So this is your strategy. You want to keep your database growth to the minimal. So what you do is every day midnight at 12 o'clock, you will run the loop purge script for 1 hour. So it goes on. Then by the weekend, you will run a parallel purge script which will clean up all the week's data. That's it. That's your strategy. So every weekend, at max you have 1 week's unnecessary data in your database. Now it may not be possible always to run a purge script every night. So in that case you may skip couple of days and then run a parallel purge during the weekend. So again, as I told you, purge scripts are basically cleanup, database cleanup at database level. And to create the purge scripts, alright, to execute the purge script, whether it's you're going to use loop purge or parallel purge, is defined by the amount of data you have and your strategy of purge. But before you execute purge script, you have to do a one-time activity which will create certain procedures, certain grants to the SOA infra, and these are the things that you're going to do one-time activity. So you're going to connect as a sys user, you're going to grant the execute on this thing. I think these grants are already there, but just to give you a quick, very quick thing, let's try to do those things. Alright, so this is what I'm going to do. Connect as
SOA DBA is a user?
SOA DBA is a user, yes. It's a DBA with the
Oracle user, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a user with sysdba privileges. So SQL plus.
This is for running only purge scripts, right? I mean the SOA working related. This user is not required. SOA DBA.
No, SOA working related. We are going to use this user. This is the owner of that dehydration store, right?
Yeah,
so,
the all four schemas.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the reason. This is one-time activity. So what we do is, SQL plus / sysdba. Then you're going to grant execute on this thing. A DBA would understand it much better because we are obviously executing it, but we don't really know what they mean. Grant any job to SOA DBA, so I'm just executing it. Now you're going to run this purge script under SOA purge. This will create the packages, views and objects that will delete the instance. So the SOA purge script just now I shown you. Let's try I'm at Unix prompt. cd2 that is my RCO. Home and code IT students wireless wire. My RCO home. I need that purge script. So RCO integration SOA infra SQL. So I'm going to execute cd SOA purge. I'm going to execute this script. So I may have permission issues. We'll see. So exit your at Unix prompt, SQL prompt. Execute this one. Unable to find. So let me give the entire path. It tries to find out in that current location. Let's exit and log in again. SQL plus / SSTP. So I'm executing the script. See, this is creating all the procedures, everything. They set an errors also. Let's see what the error is about. Okay, if the table exists, then this. The type body created. So basically it creates a set of packages. Don't worry about it. Pick up your DBA if you see any errors. So here, after you created your packages, your one-time activity is done. So pretty much you are done with this one. Then you're going to log in, alright, as SQL infra, and you will execute that loop purge or parallel purge, whatever you want. This thing. You do a readme, alright. So you're going to execute this script. So you will put it into a SQL file. This entire thing. Let's say you want to execute loop purge. Right, select it.
So these two we need to create under, if you need for all 4 schemas, or each, okay, this component, right, mediator.
No, this script is basically, it executes a procedure. This is a procedure that was created at this step. So you will execute the SQL script only once. You don't execute the SQL script again and again. Instead, what you execute is the purging.
That schema SOA infra login, but if you are creating these scripts inside mediator, BPL, or other different folder and execute this one, it will execute only instances, of that engine, or what? In the main, okay, SOA purge scripts is only one time and it will create all the required thing.
That's right. So on a daily basis, we are going to execute this only. This is our parallel loop purge script. So I just put the loop purge scripts into a file. Can't open the file for writing. I think I don't have write permissions on this directory. Let's say temp loop purge.sql. Let's say this is my loop purge. I think I missed the end somewhere. This is what you're going to do. So /temp/loop purge.sql. So this is my SQL script. Now here there is a certain important things that you will configure when you are executing, especially this one, the timestamps. So you are saying from this time till this time, remove all the unwanted instance data. The unwanted instance data is already defined. Let's say what are the various types of instance data that this purge script is going to remove. So this one. Your purging scripts are defined in such a way that it will remove all the completed successfully things, faulted things, terminated by user things, stale things, unknown state things. All these states of the instances are eligible for purging. So when you run this script takes two parameters. You are saying from minimum creation time to max creation time. Means if the instance creation time is between this and this, and the state of the instance is any of these things, this is inbuilt, then remove it. That's what you are doing. And this is the procedure that you are executing. Delete instances is the purging procedure, looped purge script. So it will take these values, min creation time that you have defined here, max creation time here, batch size also you can do. There's another thing that you can do, the run time. Means you can say I want to run it only for 1 hour. That can be defined. So you don't have to really say min and max time and worry. Let's say your data, you have too much data between these two dates, then you don't have to worry your purge script is going to run till the morning. So you can say run my script only up to 1 hour, alright, and then stop it. So whatever data that you are able to delete between these two timelines, delete that much only. I'm going to run the purge script again tomorrow, again for 1 more hour. So then you can delete the remainder. So the purge script, especially this, both these purge scripts, parallel purge or loop purge, they give you a facility to run it for a predefined time. That's the most important thing of it. Basically, your strategy, your overall purging strategy, you will put it in such a schedule like that. You run it for every 1 hour. That's it. Or you run it only 1 hour. So what you're going to do is you're going to keep this SQL query into a cron job, and you kick off that cron job at, let's say, midnight, 12 o'clock. And within this SQL script, you have a max runtime of 1 hour. So the cron job kicks in at 1 hour, at 12 o'clock, midnight, and this script, as it was already told, run only for 1 hour. So by 1 o'clock, you finish it. So like that, it's a simple cron job that runs every midnight, alright? Clean up whatever it can do for 1 hour, and then during weekend you will remove probably everything that is left out using a parallel purge script, because you cannot run a parallel purge script on a daily basis, because parallel purge scripts is resource intensive. It will basically consume a lot of resources on your database, and it will remove all the instances with these states. Now the instances that are not removed are these things, especially the ones that are currently running. Obviously they cannot be deleted. Now pending recovery, let's say you have invoked a recovery action, recover this fault, then obviously it's pending. We don't know whether it's going to be recovered or it's waiting for the recovery. Then that cannot be removed. Alright, if you want to purge any of these two, first you need to abort them, or you need to terminate them, or basically bring it to this level and then remove it. Alright, so purge scripts are basically more towards rather than you doing it as a system admin, they need to be done from a DBA. A DBA simply need to have an understanding of what the scripts are doing and what they are removing. Now the tables that are related to purging are these things. Now these are partitioning tables, they are not purging tables. The purging tables are different. These are partitioning tables, but they are also actually the purging tables. Let's say composite instance is one table that gets cleaned up. Reference instance, which is dependent on composite, gets cleaned up. Cube instance, cube scope, XML document. This is where all the XMLs, your payloads are stored. Mediator case instance, mediator payloads. Now these are some of the tables, not the entire list, but some of the tables that get cleaned up by our delete instances procedure. This one, delete instances. This is parallel purge script. Delete instances in parallel. If it is looped purge, it's only delete instances. See, only the last 4 or 5 lines is the actual script. The one above are basically value definitions. These are also the definitions of the variables. You are defining what type of variables they are. You're defining their range here. Alright. Then you're finally defining a procedure with all those variables. So delete instances and delete instances in parallel. Those are the two things. Looped purge and parallel purge. Now, as I told you, the business strategy or your purging strategy is run a looped purge for a couple of hours every day and run a parallel purge once in a week or once in a month to remove everything that is left out on a daily basis. So that's a general purging script. But another way of basically managing your DB growth is by partitioning. This is very much DBA specific. Even I couldn't get a complete hold of this one, and I'm not trying to get a hold of it. I really not much worried about it, because partitioning, you will sit with the DBA. This is a group activity more of, as a system admin, you will be working with the DBA very closely. So partitioning is basically, I'll give you a generic idea what it does. The first thing when you use partitioning is, you have huge data and you want to manage it easily. Let's say you are storing your data on a monthly basis to your database, month by month. Means there are certain files or a logical group of your database that stores January data, a logical group of your database that stores Feb data, March data, April data, like that. Let me give you an example. So here, let's say this is your database. All right. So this is your database. Now there is a table in it. The table is what you are partitioning. The table is what you are partitioning. But this table structure, the data of this table is very organized. What you are doing is, you are dividing this table logically into what are called partitions. So you are dividing this partition 1, alright, partition 2, partition 3, like that. And you are storing only specific type of data into it. Let's say January data is stored in partition 1, Feb data is stored in partition 2, March data is stored in partition 3. The partitions are logical groups associated with individual, let's say, data files. Now I want to remove all January data. If I have to remove the January data, now I'm not going to scan through the table, find out the January data and remove it. No, that's not what I'm going to do, because my data is much more organized. I know the entire Jan data is in this partition. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to simply drop this partition. So dropping this partition will take off the entire January data, and dropping is much easier than. So here what we are doing, you are not scanning through the entire table because your data is much more organized. Let's say you have a large set of files. This is something that we have in very much problem. Let's say all your certificates. usually throw out all our certificates in a cabinet in a one single large file. Now when you need something, you go through the entire file. You have to search through the entire file where your degree certificate is, where is your birth certificate, all that stuff. As opposed to it, let's say you are pretty much organized. Now you set up all your academic certificates at one location, all your non-academic certificates at one location, all your bank related stuff at one location, all your something else at one location. So now if you have to look for your degree certificate, you directly go to the academic section, pick up your degree certificates. That's easy way of doing it. But for that you need to be organized. The same way, if you are defining a purging strategy based on partitioning, you need to decide the partitioning status. First you need to partition the tables. Alright, once you partition the tables, you have to decide what type of partitioning you are going to do, or how you're going to store your data. Basically one example I given is each month data will go into a different partition. That's the easiest way of doing all these things. Otherwise, alright, so once you define your partitions, you can add and drop the partitions at any point of time with ease. That's a partitioning way of managing DB growth. But as I told you, partitioning is something that needs to be done by database. Before you do partitioning, you have to decide on what type of strategy you are going to implement for the partitioning. So talk to your DBA if you got a DBA, so see what they tell about how to partition a table. Partitioning is about tables. Instead of having a table and the data inside the table everywhere, you are organizing the data inside the table at into individual logical components, so that if you want to drop something, you know where the data is, you simply drop that partition. Now for SOA related dehydration store related partitioning, you need to partition these tables. These are the tables that your DBA would want to partition. But the problem is, some of these tables are master tables and there are dependent tables. So partitioning of a dependent table requires that you should partition the master also. So when you are talking to a DBA, you need to mention that there are master tables, then there are dependent tables. So make sure the DBA partitions both of them. A DBA is going to ask you, basically, the moment somebody says partitioning, the immediate question a DBA asks you is, are there any dependencies? Because when you partition the master, the dependencies also should be partitioned. The same way, these two are master dependent. So you will partition these tables. Now before you do a partitioning, these are certain things that you want to do, just like we did before using purging scripts. You're going to grant execute on DBMS log, you grant create on any job, you grant any directory, table, UTL file, then you log in SO and and you basically create a directory. That's it. So basically your pre-partitioning process is this one. Once you have done your pre-partitioning process, all that you're going to do is you're going to drop the partition or you're going to attach a partition. That's it. So like purging script, you create, you run the purge script every night, whereas with partitioning you don't delete, you don't drop a partition every day. Instead, dropping a partition is much faster. So you can do it once in a week kind of thing. So that's also another way of managing your DB growth. Or else you can do one thing. Let's say you have a partition plus purge based strategy. So you have a partition where all the data goes in for this week. You are running a purge script every night 1 hour. Whatever is left out, you are dropping it by the weekend. So you are not using a parallel purge script anymore. So you have a loop purge plus a partition. So loop purge will run every midnight, will remove whatever it can. Anything that is remaining is still within that partition. You simply drop that partition by the weekend. That's how you're going to do it. Now before you drop something or drop a partition, you need to validate whether that partition is that can be dropped or not, because as we are saying, the purging is basically removing the data. But before you remove, you want to make sure that can be removed without having any impact. So SOA provides you certain scripts to validate that the partition and the data inside the partition is okay to remove. So verification scripts are provided by SOA. So basically it tells you, it ensures that the partitions are eligible to be dropped. Basically it checks, it does the validation and tells you, yeah, you can drop this partition, or no, you can't drop this partition because there are dependencies. The verification scripts are available here. Alright, SQL verify thing, I think it's in the same directory. So if you go in here, yeah, in the same directory you got verify script. Alright, let's read. Yeah, there are very detailed instructions to the DBA. All that you have to do is give this file to the DBA. It should be able to execute it for you. Follow the instructions. Alright, once they verify it, they will be able to basically tell, the script will tell whether the partition is okay for dropping or not. Alright, so that's the second way of managing the database growth. As an administrator, you won't be involved into partitioning, but you will be partially involved into purging. So you will work with the database DBA at least once to execute this script first. This is a one-time activity. Then you will set up a cron job and set up a looped purge script, which is this one. Alright, so that it gets executed every night for certain time. And in this script, along with this script, you can actually generate a lot of log files that says what dropped, what was the original size before the drop, what was the size after the drop, how much memory you were able to reclaim, how many instances were deleted, how many records were removed. All those things are can be actually configured into this purge script from a DBA perspective, so that you can track whether that your purging is actually effective or not. Alright, so that's your overview of purging that I've given, because most of it is a DBA intensive work, but you will be involved as a system admin, that you should know what actually is happening. Or even when you're talking to your manager, or when you're deciding on a purging strategy, because your involvement is necessary. The DBAs don't know anything, they're doing what you are saying, that's it. So they'll ask you what's supposed to be done, so you need to tell this is what needs to be done. How it needs to be done, the DBA should take care of. It's like you are the one who is managing things without knowing anything. That's what you're going to be here when it comes to purge. Alright, that's your purging, guys. So that's all. I'm pretty much done for the entire class. So if you have any questions, shoot. So we are done with all things. Pretty much we covered everything. I'm planning on putting some additional things for the next batch.